Welcome. Wednesday, the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club is back. We got our friend Jim Clifton from IWAS Recordings, and of course, the co-hostess with the mostest, host with the mostest, I should say, not hostess.
Great start, Marty.
Yeah, whatever. How you guys all doing tonight?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
I was doing fine until that challenge to my sexuality. Now I'm not sure how I'm doing.
Well, Well, we're here. Another night, another album club. Tonight we're covering the atmospheric Norwegian black metal band Dold Vorde Ens Navn. If I'm not saying that right, any Norwegian people, sorry, it's not going to get any better. Before we get started, you guys want to add anything before I jump into a little backline and a little history of this band and anything else?
I think I'm ready to jump right in. How are you doing, Jim?
Yeah,
let's go for it.
Oh, I guess I will say one thing, though. Thanks for everybody that did check out last night's impromptu Quick Blast Tuesday stream. It was fun. We'll probably start doing that when we're available to do so a little more often. Seem to like it, so very cool. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to jump into this band. So, I'll start with a little history. Dold Vorde Ens Navn. They formed in 2019 by Vik Otnik and Havard Jorgensen, which both those guys combined, they've been in bands such as Ulver, Vedwinens Enda, Dodheimsgard, Manes, Strid, and the band everybody loves to hate, Morkere. The name translates to hidden be someone's name, which is a deeper meaning to that, which is the evil and dark part of the human mind, all the unspeakable, cruel thoughts of mankind. We're going to be covering tonight this album here. I picked Morkere, which came out in 2021 on Lupus Lounge Prophecy Productions. The album reached number 86 on the German album charts, which once again proves that Germany is way cooler than us sometimes. Hey, everybody, what's going on?
Yeah, we got folks. Ben's in the chat. Celtic's in the chat. Baloney is in the chat. Good to see you folks this evening.
Hey. So, yeah, I'm covering my cleavage. It's getting ample. Hails. Anyway, let's get into this album. Jim, let's start with you. First impression on Morkere.
Definitely some great, and, as intentional, 90s BM sounds going on there, with a really clean production, but not like slick where it was, harmful to the ears. Like a lot of this, slicker black metal stuff is to me, like modern Dimu or something like that. It was still like, dark and creepy enough where, the vibe was there, even though it was decidedly modern sounding. And, and the more I listened to it, the more I got into the vibe and I really appreciated how the additional instrumentation that finds its way onto this album with the violins and such, they weren't done in a overbearing way, you know what I mean? Or, a bombastic kind of a way, it actually kind of added to the flow of the album. So I really appreciated it.
Right on. Alan, what about you? First impression?
Yeah, first impression, I'd never heard of this band before. So, when you chose it last week, I dialed it up on the mothership and I took a look at it. It's just like, okay, this could go in a lot of different directions. You never know all the, connections to bands like Dodheimsgard. That's a branch of black metal I've never explored very much. I haven't avoided it for any particular reason. I've always kind of gotten the sense it may be a little too eclectic and experimental for my tastes, but I don't really have much of a basis for it. It's very much the kind of album, looking at it, I would never have clicked it, in terms of seeing it pop up on YouTube or something like that. It probably would have been like, hey, let's choose something else instead. So didn't know what to expect. Went into, little trepidation. Like, this could get real weird real fast. But, I don't know, first impression was pleasantly surprised. It had, a pretty solid black metal structure to it. Mid tempo, a little faster at times, a little slower at times. Good riffing. The vocals stood out right away, kind of loud in the mix. There's a lot of focus on them. The drums were kind of buried in the mix. So it kind of, felt, had a little bit of an odd balance to it. It's a good production. It's clean, but yeah, it's just kind of balanced a little funny with the vocals being so upfront. But yeah, the first impression was pretty good. It's like, I like this. I'm not sure how much I'm going to like it after repeated spins, but yeah, it definitely felt like, yeah, this is one of those things where it worked out pretty good. Shouldn't judge it by the cover, and it's going to be fun to play it several more times during the week, which I did. I think I gave it about 5 or 6 total spins since last Wednesday. So it made a good first impression.
I was going to say 5 or 6 spins on something that was kind of incited upon you is a point in the favorable direction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for me, I learned about this band. I was digging through some crap upstairs, and I found the first issue of Arcane Archivist. Hails Jesse, and hey Ben, hails to Ben, who's also a writer for this zine. Realized I never read it, so I sat down and was flipping through it, reading it, and I came across an interview with one of the guys in this band. Don't remember who it was, but I'm like, it's got Havard from Ulver, who was in Ulver from the demo up to William Blake's that 2 CD experimental William Blake album, where they're totally not metal anymore, and it's just kind of a pretentious art piece sort of. But I love me the first Bergtot and Nottin's Madrigal are 2 albums high on my Norwegian black metal list. So I instantly, like Alan did, I accessed the mothership Spotify, pulled it up, and pretty much this is the style of Norwegian black metal that I've always gravitated towards. And to hear this album and the mini CD that came before it, which we'll talk about that a little bit. At that thing, I can't pronounce this one. It's this. This is the mini CD that came out. It's I'm not even gonna try.
No,
Jing Gangera I Hertets Morkere. I don't know.
It shall henceforth be referred to as the EP.
The EP, yes. This is really weird and fucked up, and you can tell. I mean, basically every member in this band, other than Havard, is in or has been in Dodheimsgard. So there's a little bit of that going on here. My camera's freaking out here. There it is. So this was kind of in that wheelhouse. Vikotnik is using the super high end of his vocals on this. Really strange singing. This here, we'll get into it, but anyway, first I'll get there. My first impression is I loved it, and I went around telling a lot of people to check it out. It's amazing. And of course, nobody got back to me on it, so which usually tells me that no one checked it out, but that's fine. But up next, let's discuss Norwegian black metal style a bit and how supergroups shaped such an insulated scene of artists. How does this style sit with you, Jim?
I think it's great. I think that there's been some, some more or less, mixed results with black metal supergroups. Not really any I can think of that come to mind that I return to. You know what I mean? But for this, I was kind of able to forget about the pedigree and just kind of focus on the music, which doesn't usually happen when you get people like Havard and the guys from Dodheimsgard together. Now that's also due to the fact that I pretty much stop after Dodheimsgard's first album. You know what I mean? I wasn't really into their subsequent stuff. You know what I mean?
That's my favorite album as well by them. I love that album. It's so different and cool.
Yeah. And I'll butcher it too. Kronet till Conga. Yeah. But so it gave me the capability to come to this fresh. But like you mentioned, Marty, I mean, Ulver Bergtat, it's one of the greatest black metal albums of all time. Nat's Magical, a close second. And, you know, and of course it inspired me to go back and listen to the old Ulver stuff, you know, hearing this as well as the Dodheimsgard. And that was great too, you know, but what's strange is like, you know, even though those flourishes are there, especially when Ivar goes higher up on, you know, the neck or on the higher strings, which he does a lot in Nad's Madrigal, for instance, you know, it still didn't make me think of that album. You know, he was able to pull from his past, you know, those sounds that are inspirational for him, but he wasn't rehashing them, you know? And so I think, you know, for that reason alone, like, you know, he kind of like, you know, subverts the go-to opinion in my mind of a supergroup. Like, this is going to disappoint, you know, it's going to sound like a, you know, car crash of two bands if we're lucky, you know. And it didn't do that. I think these guys came together and made something different. You know, made something, you know, though clearly 90s BM influences it was meant to be, it still has its own color. You know.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, the Norwegian scene, of course, has always been kind of a funny and unique one because you've got bands running the gamut from, you know, the very primitive and raw, frosty kind of black metal to, you know, very, you know, experimental avant-garde stuff, you know, with all kinds of different instrumentation and influences and kind of everything in between. Yeah, the supergroup, you know, is definitely a big part of the Norwegian scene over the years. It's one I've never had a problem with it. Yeah, again, like you said, it's kind of an insular scene. It makes sense that these guys are just going to kind of keep recombining themselves in different configurations. You know, that said, it is also easy to sometimes get them a little mixed up and confused if you're not, you know, really, you know, deep into it. You know, I'm a little rusty on some of my black metal. It's one of the genres I haven't listened to as much in the last few years. So yeah, this was, you know, a nice chance to kind of catch up on that. But this one, as Jim said, it seemed to come together pretty well. It didn't immediately remind me just being a knockoff from any band or just a mashup of, you know, two different bands, which those projects can definitely turn into that sometimes. But yeah, this one seemed to strike a very good balance of doing something a little bit different. You know, it has some, you know, different touches and flourishes that make it sound not like, you know, just a straightforward black metal album, but it's not so far out the box that it's really hard to digest either. Yeah, again, some of those, you know, bands and albums, you know, have a reputation for you've got to really, you know, drill deep and focus on it a lot to make heads or tails of it, which wasn't the case on this one. So I felt it struck kind of a nice in-between balance in those senses. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question with the supergroup thing. Definitely no problem with them. And I think in general, they have worked out better more often than not for the Norwegian scene.
I would agree 100% with you on that. In fact, back in the day, doing all the reviews and shit for Worm Gear and Maniacs, it seemed like every PR sheet that came through was saying, you know, Norwegian supergroup. 9 times out of 10, they were good. And it's really, I sat here and did a little brainstorming and wrote down a list. Borknagar, Vedwin and Zende, Traldum, Old Man's Child, Arcturus, Dodheimsgard, Custis, Ragnarok. I just started randomly looking at the lineups of all these bands, and each member has got a list this long of bands that they're in other than their main band or not main band. And it's kind of one of those, you're right, the Norwegian scene is very unique in the fact that on the grand scheme, it's a smaller country, but it has a very eclectic and talented pool of artists that work together. They all know each other. They all hang out in the same cities. So it's kind of amazing how these little offshoot bands stuck. I mean, look at Arcturus. I mean, not that they're, you know, a super prolific band by any means, but they've really brought some very powerful proggy black metal to the forefront. And another band, Vedwin and Zende, I mean, that's another band that's very eclectic and strange. And members of that band went on to be in the equally odd Virus, and Vic Kotnik sang in some of that stuff as well. Morkere, probably one of the longest running supergroups. That started off with Garm on vocals, Ivar on keyboards from Enslaved. It's just amazing. You look at the list of bands, all the quality, and for me, I've made it very well known on here before that this era and geographical location of black metal is among my favorite out there. I just loved the Norwegians' take on atmosphere. They seem to get it. Their music transferred the nature surrounding them sonically somehow better than most, whereas Swedish scene had very similar environs, but it was more melodic and fast. And Norway just had, their playing style. They play all the strings. The bar chord, they're playing every single string and making that ring through. It shows. And from Mayhem to Bursum to all these Enslaved, all these other bands. It's a Norwegian sound. If you line it up, a Norwegian band with 10 others throughout the world, you're going to be able to pick out the Norwegian band 9 times out of 10. And this band, circling back around to this band, knowing Havard's pedigree, I'm honestly hearing a lot of Bergtot on this. I don't think it's as dense or well written as Bergtot, and it's not as aggressive or scathing as Nathan's Madrigal, but the little acoustic flourishes and the little folk pieces that pick up on here, it reminds me of Feldsanger a lot, which is my least favorite of the 3 because it just seemed like a bunch of traditional classical treatments, like they're farting around in between black metal albums. But this to me really calls back to Bergtot a lot. I really like. I've heard, a couple friends around here say, "Oh, it's really cool," but there's moments of it that are boring. I think probably the drum performance for me is the least interesting thing about the album. Although when the blasts kick in, he's so perfect and exact. It really brings the intensity, and the way the drums are produced, they're a really heavy drum sound. It really is a good payoff after sitting through a lot of slower moments to this album. But man, I love this thing. It's really, I've listened to it a shit ton, and this was going to be the first one I picked when we started doing this, but I didn't think that there was a moment where I thought maybe it wasn't good enough, but I've come around on it. I've been listening to it a lot. But yeah, next one, let's discuss the music on Morkere. I've already kind of done that. Let's discuss the music. Does it uphold the spirit of Norwegian black metal? Did this album achieve a proper atmosphere? Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. As we've been talking about, I totally think it did. Lots of moments of good creepy vibes in there, but embellished with plenty of balancing melody. Like there's a few songs on there, which one of my favorites actually is. And I'm only going to say the first word of each of these songs, because I'm not going to try. But In Som Hettens, which is the 5th track, it starts out with a violin, then goes into this kind of doomy sounding thing, and then just starts, to your point with the drums, man, just like perfect blasting, that whole, and even the violins weren't a thing in early, second wave BM, the vibe is there. It's dark and it's cold. You know what I mean? It feels like the woods. It feels like winter. The only thing I think that kind of takes me out of it is hit the I'll use it in quotes here. Clean vocals. Those are, and before we started the show, Alan mentioned it too. Like that, they are high up in the mix. You know what I mean? And which that was a little off-putting to me at first. I was like, hey, I'm trying to hear the guitars, dude. Would you quit? Attila wailing, you know what I mean? Like, Attila, was like the only one I could really tolerate that much. But on subsequent listens, I kind of started getting the vocal a little bit more. It bothered me a lot less, and I started hearing like, what I perceive to be anyway, influences of like Bayless and Fallen, some latter era, Burzum stuff going on, but I will say on the 6th track, which is how you pronounce that, Arvesenden. Oh my God. On that song in particular, the clean vocals are he just kind of gets it. They're not really out of key, you know.
Yeah.
They're like doubled over very well, and they kind of float over the riff real nice. You know what I mean? So I found myself coming back to that track 6 a lot, you know, because the music I think is solid most of the way through the entire record, but on that song I really felt, you know, that everything kind of came together on it, you know what I mean? And, so, but even with subsequent listens, you know, I mean, you know, it's part of, you know, black metal. I mean, there's plenty of black metal bands where the vocals are screeching and also high up in the mix, and so after a while, it just kind of got normal to me, and instead of it being like off-putting, it just added to where the music gave the darkness and the cold, like the vocals gave the weird, yeah, and which. You know, that's part of Norwegian black metal too, is the bizarre, especially the stuff that you were mentioning, you know, Marty, like Ved Boyne's End, and you know, I have their first record, and I still like, you know, feel like I don't get that one, you know what I mean? But I'll put it on every once in a while.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's so weird and good. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing sounds like it. You know what I mean? And you know, that I wouldn't compare, you know, this album in terms of its originality with that. I would say that it definitely still has a uniqueness that's, you know, for something that's intended to, you know, and then not only intended to, but is created by, you know, folks from that era, you know, folks from that region. It still sounds fresh. And the interesting comment on the Bergtat acoustic guitar sounds, and the second album, which I can't pronounce, and I don't
Feldsanger.
Yeah, there's no electric guitars on it, so yeah.
No.
But the acoustic parts, you know, when you said that, I was like, oh man, Marty's right. They are like, you know, I do hear the Bergtat in there and all that kind of stuff, which isn't a bad thing because again, it's one of my faves. So
yeah. Alan, how about you?
Yeah, with, you know, repeated listens, musically, it held up really nice. I think it definitely fits within the Norwegian tradition. Like I mentioned before, it's got, you know, it's a little more developed than, you know, the really, you know, cult grim style, but it's not really over the top artsy or esoteric in any way either. As I, you know, played it repeatedly through the weekend, I tried maybe to play it like, you know, once or twice a day. I didn't just sit and put it on loop. But yeah, different things started to stand out. The vocals are probably the sticking point. You know, they are kind of loud in the mix. And it's funny because it's a clean mix. You know, this isn't you know, the grim frostbitten production where, like Jim said, the vocals can often be kind of high and screechy. But these vocals aren't screechy at all. They're, if anything, he's got more of kind of, you know, a raspy growl kind of delivery. And, you know, the instruments are produced cleanly too. So it's not just this background, you know, wall of, you know, noise. Everything's pretty clear there too. It's just that it's lower in the mix. So yeah, it's a weird balance. The clean vocals in particular, sometimes, yeah, they do sound, I don't want to say off because I'm sure he was doing what he intended to, but
yeah, it seemed very intentional.
They feel intentional and they don't quite seem to fit the mood. Those are the moments where it does seem like he's going for something that's supposed to be more, you know, left field, but the music doesn't follow suit. So in those cases, sometimes it doesn't mesh as well. That was, you know, the one big, if I was going to point to like, you know, one big thing I didn't like about the album, it would be most of those passages where he goes into the cleaner vocals. Sometimes they fit pretty nicely towards the end of the album. On those tracks, they feel better. But yeah, on a couple of the earlier tracks, he goes into some of those clean sections. It's just like, oh, let's not do too much of that, please. But other things that stood out too, the riffing is very good. You know, they're actually doing different things back there. It's not just grabbing onto, you know, 2 or 3 simple riffs and putting them on repeat. You know, so that's all nicely done. The drums were kind of interesting to me. It seems like parts of the drums are louder in the mix than the others. And this is where, again, having no background as a musician, terms and stuff will fail me a bit. But it seemed like there was a noticeable absence of, you know, kick drums in the mix at times. You know, some of the sections where, you know, it's at least you're liking, you know, sort of, you know, the slightly up tempo to faster pace. A lot of times you expect the, you know, like the double bass drumming to, you know, kind of help keep that rolling. And a lot of times, you know, try as I might listen to him, like, really more guitar driven in those parts that, you hear other parts of the drum kit quite clearly. I don't know if, the bass drums are just kind of buried in the mix, or if they were intentionally laying off of them to create a little bit of a different vibe. But just there's something there. And again, sorry, I'm probably not using the best terminology for the different parts of the kit, but it feels like, the drums are either played a little differently or mixed a little differently. It's not off-putting or anything. It was just something I would notice, that you'd hear those slightly faster, sections kick in. You're like, okay, here's what they're going to really lay into the drums. It's like, no, there doesn't sound like they are. They're letting the guitars drive that section instead. Other things with the music, I do think, and Jim mentioned this, and I would agree, they did a very nice job adding these little flourishes with the additional instrumentation, where you've got, a little bit of violin here, a little bit of cello there.
Very nice touch.
They're used to very, very good effect. They don't go overboard with
Nope.
it. They're not trying to, play the cello upside down, down-tuned to B flat sharp, played through a 1970s, orange amplifier to get some kind of weird ass effect. It's just like, no, here's a little bit of cello just to, class it up a little bit, mix it up, give you something, a little distinct to notice. And those kind of little flourishes worked really, really well. They used them sparingly, but to really, really good effect. And so, at the end of the things, like, by, the time I'm playing it the fourth or fifth time, some of the songs are starting to differentiate themselves better. Some, parts are standing out. I'm like, okay, no, this part comes in this song now, and this part comes in that song now. Because, especially with the album being sung completely in Norwegian, there is a situation where songs can start to run together for me when I can't understand a thing you're saying. I have no idea what your song is about. If the songs get too samey or too repetitive, they're really going to become a blur. And I think those different little touches they used, and even the different vocals, did help with that some, even if I didn't care for them all the time. It did help make the songs more distinguishable from each other, even though I still have no idea what they're singing about, of course. So that would be my take on it musically. Marty, I know you've said a little bit, but was there other things that you wanted to comment on or point out?
I just want to back you guys up on the orchestration parts. It's very tastefully done, and I love how they focus on a singular mournful melody. It really, really helps sell the previous guitar parts, really helps pile on the passion on these songs when it comes in, and they do it so well. They don't, like you said, they didn't go over the top with it. I just love have our simple guitar lines, and when it's added, another guitar harmony comes in over another riff, or there's just a lot of really tasteful songwriting on here. And people have said, oh, it's boring. Well, there's parts where it kind of drags on a little bit here and there, but the payoff is when those melodies come in, and they're usually so memorable. They're all earworms, man. It's like super memorable riffs that stick in your head. And because you don't have English lyrics to grab onto, those little parts of orchestration and those little harmonies and melodies that stick with you end up being the hook of the song. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And in going through this album, there isn't a song I disliked on here, to be completely honest. But we've already talked about it a bit, and the vocals are obviously very much a part of this album. They're pushed to the front. Vikotnik's vocals are very unique. I'll start off on this. I just, having heard this album first, this mini CD, he's incredible. He's in full Dodheimsgard mode on this. He is all over the place. The crazy carnival-esque cleans are over the top. His black metal grimness is at the high end of his register on here. On this, I'm very happy that he toned it down. The clean, the intentionally off clean vocals are here, but they're cut back a lot from what was available on this album here. I ended up liking it because that's always kind of been his thing. So I knew that going in, but man, his grim vocals, I mean, they make me do this, listen to them. I love the Norwegian language with their accent in that style. It just seems like he's talking, singing grim black metal incantations. It's just so awesome. I don't even care that there's no English on here. It's just has so much impact. His vocal performance has so much impact. I love his grim vocals on here. TJ, we were talking, he unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, but the clean vocals were just too much of a hang up for him to even really process it. And he said he liked the album, but he hated the clean stuff, although he loved his grim vocals. So I mean, that might be a bit polarizing for a lot of people, but the grim vocals are super gnarly, and it really takes some already really well written material and pushes it back into the 90s, where I love that style of black metal, that style of Norwegian black metal. I don't care about, I mean, I like some of the Dodheimsgard stuff moving forward. I do, but I don't listen to it often. But stuff like this, I mean, I've listened to this album probably 30 times since I bought it, and it's no sign of stopping. I love it that much. But what do you know, we've already talked about the vocals, but is there anything else you guys want to touch on that before we move on?
I will say, just to throw in on the side of the grim vocals, track 4, what I'll just call Determinism.
Track 4 is Determinism Paradox.
See, I was right on.
We nailed it. Woo! Wonder Twin powers activate.
Exactly. It took us both to get there. About 2/3 of the way through, man, on that, he just really, like, it's like just his throat is just cut, just like he's almost like just throwing up on the mic, and it's so intense. Like I just really feel. I was like, holy shit! Like he had to be going crazy in the studio on that song. So that's actually my favorite thing about that track is that, like, and it's only for like a few seconds, maybe like 5-10 seconds in the middle of the song, but when he just like goes ape shit, not on the singing, but on like really going for the grim all the way, like pulling from his diaphragm, throat's getting torn up. I mean, you can really hear that. And every time I get to that point in the song, like it's almost, it's not quite goosebump inducing, but it's almost there. You know what I mean? So it's cool stuff.
It's really cool how they layered multiple performances too. He does he holds that, and then there's other shit going on over the top of it. It's so cool.
It's almost like throat singing sometimes.
Yeah,
man.
It sounds like Attila a little bit, but it does have that throat singing thing going on. Okay. Hey Noah, what's up? Sorry, my wife is upstairs yelling at my kid to go to bed. I'm sure that's being picked up on the mic. Awesome.
That's all good.
Let's talk about the production. We've already kind of done so, but what do you think, Jim? Production.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I think it's a great balance of like modern cleanliness, but with still a dark, cold sound, and I actually like the way that the drums are held back a little bit, where they're not beating you over the head. I think for this style, especially this particular style of black metal, like they're better served when the percussion isn't like, overwhelming the rest of the sounds. It's easier for the vibe to come through, and and for that intention to be there. I get some bands that have like fathers of the genre, or at least stepdads, like Gaul, Godseed, for instance. Like I want to like Godseed because I love the Gorgoroth albums with Gaul on it. Yeah. I think he's got a fantastic black metal voice, but man, I really hate the way that the drums are produced, especially on the debut. Like there's they're really modern sounding. The kicks are way in the face, and for black metal, that slappy clicky bass drum is super distracting, and so for me, I really like how the drums are back, not so much how the vocals are way up front, like that can get a little distracting, because I just love the guitars, and the bass, 90s BM. It's buried a little bit, but if you listen for it, you can hear it, and it really warms up the sound of the guitars and like the low range of the album overall. And it's not clangy except like on the first song. The bass for some reason seems a little. And this is to Alan's point earlier that there's some different mixing choices per song on this. It's like, okay, hey, the bass is I think is a little bit higher on the first song on the album, and then it gets more subdued. Like he's like maybe not playing with a pick on some songs, maybe using his fingers or something. But that adds to the dynamics of the album, and overall, my only complaint is I pull those vocals back some. But other than that, I think it's a great way to honor what came before, but to modernize it as well, and to be, I think the guys are talking about in the comments how they're being who they are at this age, and I think that the production choices on this album is emblematic of them growing up and embracing some new stuff without abandoning who they are. So.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, I think Jim put it pretty well. It's a cleaner, modern sounding production. So this does not sound like any kind of 90s throwback or anything, and that's fine. But they did find a way to make it have this kind of modern, clean sound without completely losing the atmosphere. It didn't turn into like a real sterile production or anything like that.
Good point.
And and that really does help the album. That there's kind of threading this weird needle with a lot of things on this album, and they found that sweet spot and they really stuck to it. And again, I'd agree with Jim. The vocals just a little too loud in the mix. I know they are supposed to be a big part of the music, and that's fine. I would prefer they be dialed back just a bit, especially even when they come on for the first time in track one. It's just like, whoa, that's very loud compared to everything else going on. And part of that's just everything else going on is really good too. So yeah, I want to be able to hear those parts as well as hear the vocals. So yeah, I think the production suits it pretty well, and for the most part, it's a success. Maybe just back those vocals off a tad, and you'd be there just fine.
I'm of the mindset that the vocals are great loud. I love it, man. It's just such a selling point on this album for me. I mentioned earlier, I love how the drums are super loud when the blasting kicks in. It just really drives those riffs, hurls them at you, essentially. And it's funny, you mentioned the bass guitar. The bass guitar, during the millions of times I've spun this, has never occurred to me. I've never heard it. I guess there's no bass lines that I can hear that creep in. That would have been a nice touch, to be honest. That would have been kind of a cool thing to have some independent bass lines swirling around in the,
I'll send you the model number of my headphones, man.
Right on. But no, the production, Alan nailed it. I mean, it's not sterile. It's modern sounding. It doesn't sacrifice the atmosphere. I mean, this project, I think, started out 2019. It was basically Havard and Vikotnik wanting to get together and do a song or two just for fun, like throwback to the old days, to reminisce, sort of, in a little nostalgia piece. And then it just kind of stuck. And it's going to be interesting to hear if this continues, where it goes from here. But let's go on favorite, least favorite songs, Jim.
Definitely the opening track is it's a bruiser, man. I really like it. There is the the kind of like, how did I describe it here? There's almost like a little bit of like talking sort of vocal over the chorus, but it works. Again, it reminds me of like latter era, pre-return to ambient Bard or whatever. But I like, even though it's kind of, it's done a lot, the halftime time change in the middle of the song, where, the snare is held back a little bit. There's the rolling double bass, but it's like you're almost waiting for that kind of release. It kind of, you're starting on that journey, to the center of the earth right there. It's taking you down the abyss, and so I felt like, okay, this album's drawing me in. Even with the weird vocals rolling on top of it on the very first listen, I felt like, okay, this is something I'm going to be able to get attached to. Conversely, I think like the final track, I'll just say Psych Ejurter. Who knows if that's right or not?
Sika
But
here, Tera. I don't know.
Yep, I'll take your word for it. That one, I think how we were talking about. You heard some commentary that it's a little too long or boring or whatever. That song I did feel didn't really do the album justice with the way it slowed things down so much, and it was such a and the length of the song, like I was kind of like waiting for it to end just to start back at track one again.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of bands like to close their albums with slower stuff. And I think that it's, for me as a fan, it's like a 50-50 thing. Sometimes that works. Sometimes I think it's like, okay, now I don't want to flip this over and start it over again. You know what I mean? So I think there's always a danger with me with closing with something that's kind of like lower, lower vibration. I prefer for albums to go out, crushing. You know what I mean? Where I'm left just like, wow, what just happened? My mind blown.
The finale, grand finale. Yep.
Exactly. So I kind of wish they closed with one of the other tracks, and maybe I would have liked 8 better, but it ended up being one of my least favorites for that reason. But having said that, 5 and 6, I keep talking about that Im Sam Hittens one that starts out with a violin, gets doomy for a second, and then goes blast beats. Man, that song is everything I like about this record. Even in the vocals, I don't know if it's he's humming something over the riff, or if it's like a really subtle, like hidden in the mix, like keyboard sound that's like kind of playing the same note, and it's just hanging. But there's this counter melody going on in the chorus. It's like, really, really hard to hear, but there beneath the guitar that makes it just sound super evil, man. And I love that song. I keep going back to track 5 a lot for that. So it's 5 and 6. The song right after it, I think, is a crusher too, which is the one I mentioned earlier, has what I feel is best vocal performance on it. I think his vocals are actually really good on that song. And you had mentioned earlier that the drum work can be, in terms of like performance wise, maybe not super interesting on that song. It is though. On track 6, he does some really cool fills and stuff. You can see they're just like, okay, man, let it all out this time. You know what I mean? And he's elsewhere on the kit besides just the snare and the kick and the hi-hat. So definitely 1, 5, and 6. Those are my killers, and 7 and 8. The closer, 7. The problem there with me, we were talking about how the classical elements, the cello and the violin, are great embellishments on the album. I think everything gets a little over the top there, and that one, those classical elements kind of take the front center stage for the first half of the song, and I started feeling that little bombastic demu feeling a little bit, which I really don't like. The bands that like infuse that a lot, they succeed at, manage to keep the atmosphere going. Like, of course, greatest album, one of the greatest ever, talking Emperor here. I won't say anymore, but a lot of bands, they can't get that, it just ends up sounding silly. So 7, I think that it was a little over the top. It was really weird. There's hardly any percussion in it, and it was like they were trying to, do their Requiem off. It was their Into the Pandemonium weird song, and it's, but anyway, 1 through 6 absolutely killer. 1, 5, and 6 stunners. You know what I mean? And if you want a downer, go to 8, but skip 7. You got that? I got a math thing going for you.
Yep.
All right,
Alan. Favorites, least favorites.
Let's see, favorites 5 and 6, and I just won't even pretend to try to pronounce them and save all of us some embarrassment. But yeah, 5, has the nice kind of short classical instrumentation opening with the violin, and then it comes back again at the very end of the song, playing them out. So it bookends the song really nice. It's got, gives it, this sort of, slightly soundtrack-ish vibe to it, a little, extra, layer of epic to both open and close the song. So yeah, I really liked that one. And then on track 6, that one, is kind of goes in a different direction. It's more straightforward, picks up the pace. It's one of the more up-tempo songs on the album, but works really well also. And maybe it's the fact that those two are back to back and kind of have two slightly different approaches that they kind of help accentuate one another really nicely. So yeah, really like that pair. Yeah, Jim's right. The last two songs do change a little bit. I didn't mind track 7 as much as Jim did, but it does feel very different compared to some of the others. In terms of a least favorite, like you said before, Marty, there's no song on here that I absolutely did not like.
No.
If I'm going to pick one to name, maybe track 2, and only because in that one I feel that's one where the clean vocals maybe hit really threw me off more than in some of the other tracks. Musically, nothing wrong with the track, but that was looking at some notes.
They're a little brutal on 2.
Yeah, this was the track where I put the cleaner vocals are different, which is looking for the polite way to say that this isn't working so good on this particular track. But so I'll say 5 and 6 is my 2 favorites. Then track 2 maybe least favorite, simply because of the clean vocals being a little too much for me, at least on that one. What are your favorites and least favorites, Marty?
Well, there's no denying the first song is an excellent mission statement. They start the record off incredibly strong. It kind of sizes up what the whole album's going to be like, but it's the 4, 5, and 6 for me. Wow. I mean, it's a perfect trilogy. There's like an excellent mix of dynamics and speed, and you got the acoustic flourishes, you got the orchestration, you got the song that's got the real simple that they repeat over and over and over and over again. Builds up such a really cool mood and feel. So when it all kicks back in again, it's like, oh fuck yes, so good. Those 3 songs are the be all end all on this album, but I don't have a least favorite. I really don't. I kind of take this album as a whole. Those 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to probably repeat a couple times before I let the album go the rest of the way. So good. But I've got no problems with this album. Mostly bangers. I just love the feel, and we're going to end here on the Judgment final thoughts. I'm just going to keep going with this. I listened to this album and it makes me want to say Enslaved, Borknagar, Who. I don't care. I'm getting to the point where those bands are killer, but Borknagar is kind of been really hit or miss for me. Someone mentioned dad black metal in the chat, and when that True North album came out, I listened to it. I'm like, this is dad black metal. I said it. I mean, whoever said that nailed it. I mean, that's what it feels. Enslaved. They're still amazing talent. They've got an amazing sound, but they've just spun into a prog sphere that I can't follow them. I just don't. I can't go where they're leading me. I think it's cool. It's not something I connect to. This is just more of a bare bones, straight up, really well written, really atmospheric, really melodic form of black metal that doesn't have all that pretension attached to it. Call it dad black metal if you want. I'm completely fine with that. Jim, what do you think? Judgment, final thoughts.
I think it's killer, man. I love it. And, even though, 7 and 8, I've got some criticisms for it. Like, I think 8 is just a victim of its placement in the roster. 7 is still, commendable for its attempts at being weird. It succeeds grandly at that. And it's funny you mentioned 4, dude. Like I had it in my list of faves, but I'm like, I can't put 1, 4, 5, 6. So I took it down to 1, 5, 6. But 4 was definitely up there for me too. The Determinisms, whatever the hell. There's a lot of great dynamics on that song, and yeah, those are a great trilogy. And I'm super happy me and Alan both love 5 and 6. But no, it's a great album, and I think it's I'll pull the cliche. It's more than the sum of its parts. It really is, man. You know what I mean? Not knowing the band's pedigree, if I didn't know who they were and you gave me this album, I'd say, hey man, I fucking love this. You know what I mean? and it's just, to me, it's just icing on the cake that it's got the guys from Ulver and Dodheimsgard in it. That's just extra coolness. But this album stands on its own, man.
Totally.
And to your point, there's a lot of bands that kind of never broke the chain of their black metal, still putting out albums that have kind of diminished over the years, and I think this album crushes a good portion of that. So.
Yeah. Alan.
Yeah, I like what you said, Marty. This is an album that has enough new and interesting things going on to make it stand out from the pack of sound alike bands or bands that have gotten stuck into a little bit of a very narrow lane. But it doesn't go so far as to be really pretentious or proggy or hard to wrap your head around. It's hitting that sweet spot right in between there. You can listen to it and find a lot of cool stuff, and holds up well with repeated listens. But you don't have to sit and study this album for 12 hours and write a thesis about it to try to understand it either. So it's hitting a very nice in-between zone for me for black metal, which again is a genre that I haven't completely ignored it in recent years, but I haven't played as much black metal lately as I have death metal or doom metal or power metal or even thrash metal. So it was, kind of, a nice sort of refresher on, this is a really cool to see a band, even in this late stage of black metal's development, finding their own voice, and it's a voice that's interesting without being pretentious. So big thumbs up for that.
Right on. And that leaves us at the end of this, and I will finish by saying I really hope that they continue on. I'm really looking forward to the next album, and I hope it's not all crazy proggy stuff. But anyway, Jim, TJ was supposed to pick tonight, but he's not here. So you're leading us into what are you leading us to next week? What are we listening to? Oh
man, here it comes.
Oh, is this what I think it is?
Well, it's gonna be 1988, baby. July Rage.
Oh my!
Kill to Survive.
Hold on, let's get you bigger here. Oh, hold on.
I haven't seen that one in a long time.
There it is, man. There it is.
Oh my god!
It's the beginning of the end. Oh, it's still got the warning sticker on there. Parental advisory, explicit lyrics. Oh yeah. A little culturally insensitive cover there, but it was the 80s. I'll just say they didn't know any better. But yeah, man, definitely probably a third or fourth, fifth tier thrash metal band.
Thrash was super tired when those guys were out.
Yeah. There's something about this record, man. It's got some bad and some good, but there's charm galore. So we're gonna discuss.
Sounds good. There's I know one old Malaya Rage song I used to play to death, but I don't know if it's on that album or one of the others. I'll have to go back and check.
Nice.
All right. Well, Kill to Survive, right? Malaya.
Kill to Survive. That's right, man. It's the beginning of the end.
Massachusetts thrash at its second or third tier finest. I do kind of like the band, although it's been ages since I played any of their stuff.
Yeah. So we're going from the grim and the cold to the nice summers in Massachusetts.
So people been bitching that we've been going, everything we've been covering has been either German or Norwegian lately. So it's good to get on back on U.S. shores. And I've never heard this record other than probably a video. I think there's a video or two off of this on MTV back in the day, I think.
I'm pretty sure they were included on one of those. It was like not combat metal, but they had those VHS collections of random videos for bands. I'm pretty sure Malaya Rage was featured on one of those back in the day too, if I remember right. I had it, but yeah, we'll have to dig into that and figure out which one it was. But that's for next week.
Let me put it in the chat here. MELIAH.
Yep.
Rage.
Yep. Yeah. MELIAH. Yep. And then next word.
IAH. Rage. Kill to Survive. There you go. Okay, everybody, you've got your marching orders. And it'll be fun. It'll be a fun one for sure. Oh, here we go.
Wow, how many of these Mile High Raged albums did I have? I'm looking at these like, yeah, I had that. Yeah, I had that.
I've had none. I zero.
I had at least 2 or 3 of these. Yeah.
Prepare for that to change, Marty.
They got to be better. They got to be better than Gothic Slam. Who died and made you God? I saw that video the other day. I'm like, oh my God, I hated this fucking song when it was on MTV. But well, cool, man. Great show, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. And we will Friday. What's Friday? Friday is
Aaron from the
Aaron from the Chachton. We're still working out a topic, and we'll get that figured out. But we will see you all Friday. And Jim, as always, thank you. We'll see you next week. Alan, you're
Always
the best
fun.
hostess with the mostest.
Oh, forgot about that.
Toxic masculinity, Marty.
My tongue tripped over itself. But anyway, we'll see you all Friday. Take care. Don't hang up.